We will now have the second session, which is Technology as an Enabler, which will be moderated by Dr. Jha. After that, we'll open the floor for question and answer after the second session is over for some time. So, thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Jha.
A very good morning. I'm Fischer. I'm a faculty at the School of Management at IIT. I'm also involved with the Tata Center and the Center for Policy Studies. So, my background is political science, who is at a very strange place in School of Management. So all my colleagues look at me very strangely because, what is a political scientist doing in the School of Management? And I often say that actually a lot of the decisions that we take in management are actually political, not in a shallow way, but in a very deep sort of way about why decisions get to be taken in a certain way. Right? So seeing the audience in this room, I've been really encouraged because some of our faculty, we were sort of competing in terms of which one of the sort of different discussion venues will attract more audience. So I'm just trying to figure out why there is, interest in waste, right? Perhaps. So there is an underlying anxiety, I think, and my sense is waste is an anthropological issue, certainly. Why I say anthropological? Because there is an entrenched way that it seems that we look at waste, right? It's come from generations after generations. It's certainly a very sociological issue as well, right? Because I see my next door neighbor doing something and I kind of imitate those practices. It is a political issue most certainly because it's not in my backyard that it has to be, the waste has to be sort of accumulated, it has to go to somebody else's backyard. But last but not the least, it is a technological moment as well, right? So we move to our next brief panel discussion. Let me introduce the speakers. And then I'll have them please make some introductory remarks, and hopefully we'll have time to, sort of pursue some conversation based on your remarks. I'd like to first introduce Dr. Rakesh Kumar, who's the director of CSIR DERI, which is located in Nagpur. Dr. Kumar is an authority in environmental chemistry, water quality assessment area. He is an alumnus of IIT Bombay and a regular speaker at various events organized by the Institute. Thank you for coming today. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Richard Dias, who is the General Manager for the Hindustan Waste Management Private Limited, which is India's first integrated municipal solid waste treatment facility, compliant with Government of India solid waste management rules of 2016. He has a background in marketing, branding and communication, and he does make it clear to us that he should also be told that he was the station head for radio channel Big 92.7 FM, right? We also have with us Mr. Arun Murugesh, who is the lead for Sahas Zero Waste Technology. Sahas is a Bangalore-based social enterprise. In his current role, Mr. Arun oversees the material recovery facility, which is an uninterrupted factory set up to process large volumes of dry waste and improve the average dry waste selling rate through mechanization. And his organization is also involved with IMB in terms of their waste management. Last but not the least, we have two faculty from IIT Bombay. Professor Manish Chandel, who is professor at CESE. Professor Chandel is with CSE and IIT Bombay. His research interests include carbon capture and storage, chemical looping combustion, fluidized bed combustion, greenhouse gas mitigation, solid waste management, and waste to energy. Right? So several issues that he has interest in. And last but not the least is Professor Srinivas Sitamaraju. Dr. Srinivas' research is in the area of CAD, CAD, Fischer synthesis, which I do not really know much about, but it would be great if you can tell us. The thermodynamics of phase equilibria, gasification, reactive distillation, and waste to energy options. He is our in-house pyrolysis expert. Thank you. Because we are short of time, so what I'll do is invite Dr. Rakesh Kumar to make his introductory remarks. As you will, if you want to sit from here.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you for a very nice introduction. I would straight away go to the points that those were listed, and I have been actually warned and advised both that don't deviate from the topic that has been mentioned. So a few of the things that immediately caught eyes to a lot of people here: artificial intelligence and its use in waste management. We initiated this dialogue about 5-6 months back, tagging waste to the individual. I don't know whether it can be called artificial intelligence, but it could be normal, common intelligence as well. That anything that you buy since morning till evening gets tagged to your head. So the way we are getting tagged through our smartphones, it's easier to do it. And I was not joking, so I spoke to some people in CMAX Bangalore and a couple of people in CD Piranha, that it is possible to at least tag 50 to 60% of the material that we buy now. And if you are not able to account for it at the end of the day or at the end of the month, that these are the things that I bought, it was supposed to generate X amount of waste, and did I do the waste segregation and disposal, or whatever you call it, disposal to a place where it was designated to. So it's possible to do it. A small pilot we have started, and actually I'm looking for some more people to come into this, because this is a very new area, and chances are that I will be able to do at least 50 to 60% as of now. We could possibly do chocolate wrappers and gutka wrappers probably later, but all that what we do in terms of buying milk packets, food packets, vegetable packets, anything of those kind is possible. So this is something which is something which technology can solve, because we can track and get to a point where it should be done. The second one, which a lot of people talked about, pads, sanitary pads, and related disposal. There are some people who have started working on the whole sanitary pad can be actually made out of material which is not having plastic. And even there is a scientist, a lady scientist. There is a group of lady scientists in our institute, 6-7 of them, and then now they have a group of some NGOs also who have joined, 30-40 of them. They are looking at how do you make those pouches also, where you can put used sanitary napkin, which are again not plastic, right? And then there is an institute of DRDO, is called ARCI in Hyderabad. Advanced Research of Ceramic, it's basically a defense lab. So they have worked on ceramic material, in which you can very easily, within 2 minutes, you can reach a temperature of about 800 degrees centigrade. So normally the problem of all sanitary pad and related incinerators are that it takes long time for them to reach that temperature. And then it has to retain that temperature once the dosing has been done. Once you put the pads in, then it should retain that temperature of 850-900 degrees, so that the complete combustion takes place. And this whole cycle should get completed in 3 to 5 minutes. I think that's the challenge. So once they had developed it, they approached us, and we looked at the emission part of it. So the dioxin and furans formation from any of these where plastics are there, chlorinated plastics are there, because a very crucial thing, because earlier we were talking about big incinerators like the one which you are talking about at Devnar, creating dioxin furans, but now we will have so many incinerators in schools, colleges, hospitals, hotels, and we will generate those small sources of dioxin furans. So there is small tweaking which has been now done, which will be able to get to this temperature of 900, so that your dioxin furans cannot be formed. And if it all gets formed a little bit, so there is a after combustion device, which is like a catalytic converter in the vehicles, which has been fitted at the top. So what you see from the top, there is nothing which is coming out, meaning there is complete combustion the second time, and then adsorption. So technologically it is possible to solve, but we need to also impress on all pollution control board, brand these incinerators which are going to go to 850 to 950 degree range. Anything below are not likely to give you the benefit that we are looking at. And the third one, I thought I will not give an answer, but this is a caution. Now, when I'm looking at composting as a process, There are 28 composting methodology which I have seen myself, meaning those who have come and talked to us. Now there are some more which have come who claim that they can create compost in 1 hour, half an hour. Some of them are very rigid, they'll say 5-6 hours. So anything which is biologically driven and compost creation cannot happen in these many hours, at least I don't know whether it's possible to do it. So some kind of guideline should be placed if Pollution Control Board and Ministry takes time. Probably the compendium which Professor Agnihotri was talking about, we could list in those compendium and widely circulate, saying that any composter which is of whatever kind should be not below this, it should be higher than this, or should have following parameters, and those only should be promoted or supported. Otherwise, we are getting into a process of I have myself seen 1 hour composter which is nothing but is a pressure cooker. You put your waste. So we should not call it composter. We may call it pressure cooker and still deal with it that way. With regard to the challenge of how do you immediately measure the compost quality, I think there are 2-3 groups which are working, and it will be good to do a separate half-day workshop to see whether a chip can be used. Like there are pH sensor, moisture sensors, and there are carbon nitrogen sensors. So these sensors will be able to give this very quickly, and I think that's the need of the hour. If we can develop a chip which can sense your blood sugar without taking a blood sample, this is much more easier. Right? So I don't have an answer to this, but I'll be willing to work and discuss with anyone who wants to do this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next move to Mr. Richard, if you have some opening remarks.
So, a very good morning. So, I've had the privilege of actually heading one of India's first integrated waste treatment facilities, which was set up in Goa. And, it's interesting that I'm on this panel in one of the most elite institutions, at least when it comes to science technology. But I'd like to focus on that word enabler. Because when we're talking about solid waste and we're talking about solutions in solid waste, while technology is definitely a very important factor, it becomes extremely difficult to manage if some preliminary hygiene is not maintained. And I think therefore, the discussions that came up in the first group are so much more important, because if we need solutions, it has to start with mindset change. And with all the technology that we have, if you throw a mixed bunch of waste, and I think this is a question to anybody, I don't think there is a technology that can say we will sort it out. So every technology that we're referring to is only functional if it gets that very specific input that it is required to get. And the moment we don't pay attention to this at the grassroots level, which is segregation, all technology begins to fail, and then we start blaming one and the other. So whether it is Germany you're blaming, Indian waste you're blaming, or whoever else you're blaming, the cause is because of the input waste. So we have to respect that technology is based within 2 inverted commas. It tells you what the input has to be, and unless you can give it that input, it starts becoming a bigger and bigger challenge. So let's recognize that at the onset. Having said that, I think Mr. Rodriguez made a very valid point that, and I think Mr. Patel made that same point yesterday, that there was a time when India did not have a problem, and I think globally there wasn't such a big problem with waste, and then suddenly something changed, and today we are grappling with this problem, and we're trying to go back to that point where there is no problem. So during this duration, this is where technology is very important, because for example in Goa, we've had many pros and arguments contrary to that. Oh, why do you need a centralized treatment plant, and why can't we go in for decentralized models, and there are so many easier, cheaper models, and I agree to all that. But what happens till we reach that point where we can start behaving ourselves, when we can start segregating? Do we continue to make mountains? So till then you need a technology that will at least give us that breathing space, that will at least give us that little bit of lifeline extension, so that we don't bury ourselves earlier than we need to, right? And that's where I think technology does play an important role. So when it comes to on the first point, which is information technology as a platform, I think today we can make great use of this technology available because of the arguments: centralized versus decentralized, composting versus biomethanation versus incineration, waste to energy versus cement kilns. I think finally, if we can get a single audit point where we say what is the final carbon footprint from any methodology, because one solution fits all doesn't work in waste management. Every city, every town, every neighborhood will have different challenges, will have different problems, and the solutions will be very different, and you cannot take one. So just because it works for Goa, this model may not work for any other place. You will have to, there will be a lot of common ground, but you will have to tweak, you will have to change, and some of these things, therefore it is important to find out which technology is most relevant in each space and how will it work best. And therefore I think, if we can have a tool through information technology where you can put in all the inputs and you will get a kind of a figure which tells you what will be the carbon footprint if you use a particular technology, so that you can start tweaking it even before you make crores of investments, right? So I think that's something that could be very valid and very useful if it came up. With regard to compost, and I see the concern, right, in everybody that this compost, will it be used? So we continue to run this plant. We generate a decent quality of compost. It's not the best in the world, because when you get mixed waste and when people don't segregate, there will be plastic in it, there will be glass in it, and every city compost will have its you cannot get that quality of compost that you would get from farmyard manure. Okay, so let's be very clear about that. But the question here is, what do you want to use this compost for? You don't necessarily need it to use it for food production. You can use it for social forestry. You can use it. There is so many other areas where you can use it. And as Albert was saying yesterday, that even if you use it as a medium to help moisture retention in the ground, it's perfectly wonderful. So at the plant, and I think Mr. Rodriguez will agree on this, is that there's never enough compost left. There are people that come from all around and keep on taking anything that we can produce. So I don't think there is really a big challenge in getting the compost off your hands. I'll tell you where the challenge is when I want to start selling it. Right? So now I want to make money out of this compost. Why should I? So the first rule of waste management that I would prescribe is that treatment is important. It's not a method to make money. All governments need to recognize this, that treatment of waste is important. It's going to cost you money. It's not going to bring you money. Because if you're going to generate waste, it's going to cost you to take care of that waste. So if you apply this rule, then composting, of course, it's always welcome that if you create something that, that can create compost, it's always welcome, but it's not something that's a game changer at this point. With regard to sanitary napkins and diapers, it's a huge challenge. Again, it's the way that we've changed living our lives. Even a generation ago, there was wash and use, at least when it came to diapers for children. What happened to that? I can understand when we are traveling that you need to quickly, you need something that's more convenient, but we started using it even in our houses. So this has again become a kind of a single-use case. We need to change the way we go about things. Sorry, I'm I think out of time. There are a few other points, but I'll let the other speakers go with it, and then we'll come back again at this time.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. I'm from a company Saha Zero Waste, and I'm going to try and talk sort of very hands-on perspective, because this is what we do on a daily basis. We manage dry waste and wet waste, but I'll sort of talk about technology as an enabler with my experiences in operating tri-waste. Now again, I'm going to open with the same line as well. Technology as an enabler is probably the best title you can have for this discussion now, because it's not the solution, it's just an enabler. Okay, and you can look at technology to help us out in many aspects. So we're looking at core fundamental aspects of waste management here, yeah. And the first interesting topic is how do you make technology to make waste management exciting. There are certain, there are people who are working on certain platforms. So if you can imagine there was like a platform, like a website or an app or something like that, where you can go and actually check for yourselves, how can you make yourself zero waste? How can you make yourself plastic neutral? It's a nice concept. So let's say you just go out there and just answer a few questions and finally it comes up with a number of how much plastic you've been using. Try and reduce it, first step. Second step, how can you actually bring about recovery of such plastic elsewhere? So can you actually get a service provider to help you? So there are such kind of good ideas which are coming out there, this is where this platform for carbon footprint as well comes in very handy. So the more we look at technology to solve these kind of problems, make it interesting, make it a bit more of an awareness tool, it really helps. So I'm talking about starting from the basics of technology, and we can straight away jump to something as complex or exciting as artificial intelligence, right? So AI is the buzzword. Now, where can you use AI in waste management is a big question, and a lot of people say that it could be hype, etc. So if a common man could think about AI, you could say, okay, there's a big conveyor belt, you have a lot of material going out there, can you have robots picking up waste? This is probably where people start thinking, but I say, can we start thinking even right at the at the sort of fundamental aspects. For example, if you look at successful waste management stories outside of India, data collection has been such an important factor. Okay, some cities like Vienna, who've been very successful with waste management in a very holistic approach, they still continue to collect data of their waste because your lifestyle's changing. So will waste. So can you use real good tech, basic fundamental tech, to understand basics and to actually be future ready in terms of having the high-end tech ready to be able to sort of cater to this kind of data collection. So simple concepts of, so we just heard that, what fits in Goa could not fit elsewhere in Mumbai or Bangalore or wherever. So how do you understand what fits where, Data collection and artificial intelligence and, big data and all these kind of criteria can come in on how do you understand waste, how do you make sure segregation at waste is possible, because you have on the top you have the policies, and we have very good policies in India, How do we actually make sure that we come in between? We're talking about coming down 50% in both ways, right? The biggest gap in between is the collection and transportation. So you need to understand how do you actually solve that problem by actually understanding the two other spectrums, and that's where things like artificial intelligence can come into play. The other interesting things that I can talk about are tech as an enabler, not to actually displace livelihoods and social impact. We already heard, waste pickers are what I call the angels of the city. We wouldn't have a clean city if it wasn't for our waste pickers. So how do we make sure that we believe in a decentralized model, we work in a decentralized model, and it's not the solution, but it's like the test match that we're talking about. You're just hitting away the singles and the twos through very sort of localized waste management system. So if you look at mechanization, it can actually help solve the problem of increasing efficiencies at a decentralized way. To solve waste management, so for example, you at your house you have two types of bin, right? So you segregate it into two types at the source. You then take it to a decentralized mode, segregate it into another 5 types, let's say. Use mechanization to actually improve efficiency, to make waste management viable, make a business model around it. Finally, you can take it to a larger place like our, Goa, the facility in Goa, where you could probably break it down into, 22 to 50 different types. You can. You take plastic, right? Currently, the informal sector of Bangalore segregates plastic into 25 different types. And plastic is just one type out of the 22. So you can actually use the highest level of technologies at that level, but then all along the way you can actually have different levels of technology mechanization coming into play to make the whole system as a holistic solution. There's just some of the ideas I have, but I have few more, but I think due to time I'll move on.
Okay, thank you. Professor Manish.
So, good morning everyone. I would like to talk about 3 points, number 6, number 5, 2 and 6 in that order. So the number 5 is very interesting, disposal of refuse dried fuel. In fact, it's very interesting that we say one time we say that it's a fuel, and second side we are saying disposal. Why? Because wherever we could generate some RDF, we call RDF in some plants, even we found difficult even to sell it or find the user for that. So that's why probably disposal, but I would say perhaps utilization. So the problem with the RDF in simplified term is how we are defining, by many of us are defining days, like that plastic, that paper which is soil, which cannot be recycled, should be used as a fuel because it has some calorific value. But if you understand that if it is soil, it is contaminated, it doesn't have, its quality is not proper, how someone can find it useful? We tried to sell it to the cement plants saying, look, we have generated RDF. Then they say, okay, you have RDF, but it's no value or it's not adding a lot of value to me. Imagine you can say that it's a fuel, who would not like to buy it or use it? But that was not the case. So the question is, what is RDF and what is the standard for that? What is the minimum quality criteria for that? So that was a big challenge. That's why in many places when they say we have RDF, no one was ready to buy. And even if they were ready to buy, they say we will not give you money because it's not enhancing my process. I'm not gaining anything. In fact, I have to put additional efforts to take care of it. So very recently, I could read a few days ago that Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs has come up with guidelines which says that, okay, this should be the characteristics of the RDF so that it can be called class 1, class 2, and hence cement industry or maybe some kind of thermal power plant would be able to take it. The question here still remains whether whatever standards they are put, I can see that they must have done a lot of effort, but whether we can produce that kind of RDF or not. Otherwise, this RDF itself, you are right that it itself become a challenge to how to dispose it. Second thing I would like to talk about, and it's also related, is about the composting. So we are right to say that we should have this decentralized composting facilities and every house or community can have it. But imagine that how much compost we're talking about. We are in Mumbai, for example, we're talking about, let's say, 10,000 tons of waste. If 5,000 tons of that is biodegradable, we're talking 1,000 tons of compost produced every day. And I haven't not done any analysis, so I cannot comment, but in my opinion, it's very difficult to find a market or even find a user for 1,000 tons of compost every day in a city like Mumbai. Okay, the second problem with that is, what is compost? How can I say that it's compost? It's 24 hours process, 48 hours. So there are 36 technologies mentioned, you have gone 28, so whatever. So we have to standardize and we have to make a rules that say that, okay, this process should be called composting if it has gone under these processes itself. For example, if you look into the composting, if it doesn't go through a thermophilic process, it also can contain bacteria, which may also contain pathogens. So for example, if I put it in 2 days in my house, thermophilic process doesn't happen. Actually, we think it's stable, everything is fine, but actually it's a source of bacteria and waste. It reminds me, someone gave me a very small pot which says that you can keep it on the dining table itself. It doesn't smell, it will not grow, nothing, put some water. So the first thing I told to my wife is, please take it out. It may be full of bacteria. Who knows who has checked it? So standardization is necessary to say that, okay, this is the process and these are the parameters we have to see. Otherwise, in my opinion, this is a difficult situation. So the question is, if we are generating 1,000 tons of compost and if it cannot be used inside the houses, etc., or
by the community, etc., then probably we need to find a system from where someone can collect this compost and sell it to maybe, I do not know to whom, to municipal itself, to the farmers. So for that, the standardization and the parameter, etc., is required. And of course, then we need cheaper devices which can say, okay, this is a compost. But imagine everyone, 1,000 ton, 500 places, actually it's going to be more than that, produce some kind of compost, and when we want to sell it, we are talking about standard, no one knows what that standard is. So that is the second thing. Then the third one is about pollution control technologies for incinerators, more so about dioxin and furans. So I would say that in developed countries, they have very much standardized the incineration systems, and hence they know how to deal with dioxin and furans. Some technologies are existing. The question is whether they are economically cheap or not. But if you see, the incineration itself is not a cheap technology. So if someone is saying that we can do an incineration and it will be economically viable, that in my opinion is not possible. More than that, with respect to dioxin and furans, the question which we haven't solved yet is how to measure it actually. There are hardly any lab, I would say one or none, in India who can measure dioxin and furans. So if you ask people, for example, those who are running some kind of incinerator, they will tell, yeah, we have measured it. Then you ask, how do you measure it? Then say we send it to a company which takes it to Australia or Europe. So basically whether how much dioxin and furans are produced, whether these technologies, what people are saying their technology there, whether they are working, we also need some kind of establishment to find how we can measure it. Yeah, that's 3 points I would like to say.
Thank you so much. Professor Srinivas.
Hi, good morning everyone. So I'll start off with the question that Professor Shirish asked, like on what is Fischer drop synthesis. So if you look at the most far-fetched solution for MSW, apart from incinerator, you can do something called as gasification, which is you partially burn this municipal solid waste, do all kinds of treatment with it and get what is called as synthesis gas, which is a mixture of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Then feed it into what is called as the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, which can give you liquid transportation fuels. People have used this process successfully for converting coal, biomass, natural gas to liquid. So in general, it is called as an XTL process. So I hope that answers. Okay. I'll be touching upon points 5, 6 and 7 in the list given here. So I'll start with 7 because I think that is the one that no one has really talked about. So it says affordable scrubbers to minimize sulfur content in pyrolysis soil. So most of my colleagues have actually talked about the importance of knowing what the waste, what is the characteristics of the waste, what is the input that we are actually feeding to different processes. At the same time, I think we should also set our eyes on what is the intended use of the different products. So unfortunately, pyrolysis oil is something that people try and market, or at least say that it can compete with petrol and diesel. Okay. So the amount of diesel or petrol that is manufactured in refineries, or the amount of fuel that we use, is just unimaginable. Okay. So in my honest opinion, I don't think we should look at pyrolysis oil as a substitute for petrol or diesel. Rather, there are other places where you can use it, say like furnace oil, for example, in small scale industries, etc. So this takes care of two things. So one is the sulfur levels, which is written here. So all of you, at least most of you, I think, would know that the amount of sulfur that you have in transportation fuels is in the order of ppm. Okay? 50 ppm in diesel, and I think it's around 15 ppm in petrol right now in India. And we have talked of moving away from BS4 to BS6 in another 2 years. Okay? And that's a couple of 1,000 crores of investment for the existing refineries to upgrade this fuel. So I don't think if you're talking about easy ways to treat waste and get something that is marketable, probably you don't want to invest so many crores of money. But if you go to low sulfur heavy stock or the fuel oil that I talked about, you overcome this hurdle. And there are some other simple technologies which can take care of sulfur. That's the point 7. Let me quickly touch upon the incinerator. So as some of my other colleagues have said, there are these small incinerators that are now coming up, which say that you have to empower women, etc. I'm not against that, but this is a very classic example of, do you want to take care of point sources of pollution which are in one place or which are spread over. A good analogy is your cars. So cars use a lot of fuel and they emit a lot of carbon dioxide. Power plant also emits a lot of carbon dioxide, but it's very easy to capture the huge amount of carbon dioxide coming out of a plant. There are mature technologies, but they are not put into place because there is no price on carbon. Okay. Similarly, if you want to now get rid of all that carbon from cars, you can imagine how difficult a proposition that is. Okay. And probably that's also one of the push why people want to move to electric mobility, because in that case all the CO2 is emitted at one scale or one place, which is the power plant, and all your cars are green. So you can now think of what would happen to all these incinerators. To add to it, there is a problem of regulation. So sulfur is the precursor for sulfur dioxide formation. So world over, people have enforced power plants to bring down their sulfur dioxide emissions. Only recently has the government asked the NTPC power plants to do it, and they have in turn asked for more time. So regulation and point sources, large or small, is a question that we should answer when we talk about these incinerators. The last one is the refuse-derived fuel I want to touch upon. So just like the pyrolysis oil, I think when we are trying to make RDF, we also need to know whether you want to send it into a power plant or a cement industry, because there are different qualities and the price that the person who is making this RDF is going to get. Not only that, I think the government and also policymakers should probably look at alternative technologies for using refuse-derived fuel in power plants, especially with fluidized bed boilers and fluidized bed combustion. So with that short note, I would like to thank.
We have how much time? Okay. So the job of the moderator is always difficult when there is such rich set of ideas that come up. So what may be better is that we, have questions fielded from the audience, and then at the end we can have maybe one round of closing comments. Right? So we will take questions in threes so that we can sort of address them. So
Information technology platform, but apart from carbon footprint, I thought that should also go to the other table where community is involved. So information technology to involve community in the waste management. I think that was the theme there, and in a way that was the theme here, and that connects that. And I don't think anybody has talked about it. I would just only want to say, how can we involve community using the information technology? How can a resident know how green he is, or his building is, or his area is? Would it help in creating a kind of an information technology platform where every child knows which area she is living in, and is it greener than the next door, and can she bring in that enemy as an operating, motivating factor to bring about that? And a whole manthan that is required that can happen across this through the whole lot of discussions on different issues of technology, impacts of technology, cost of technology, etc. I think that is an important area that we should.
good, thank you. That's a good comment. Thank you.
Good morning. So it's not a question, it's a comment. Like when you say workshop in waste management, and I think this is what Satish was talking about, waste has a very big and large, scope. And particularly the country is struggling right now in the industrial byproducts and the hazardous and toxic waste, including the nuclear waste. So in this context, and myself being a geotechnical engineer who talks more about what was done wrong by our great grandfathers rather than what our kids are going to do, because I think everybody understands the problem. So the problem arises from what has been done already and what we are living with. And this is where rehabilitation of the landfill, that nobody discussed about this at all, which is going to be a very crucial issue for the contemporary society. Now, do we have an answer that how we are going to rehabilitate the landfills which were in the outskirts of the city earlier, but now they are in the center of the city. So these are the prime spots right now. I think this is a major issue, and how to tackle with this, what type of rehabilitation should be done, and what we are, in fact, there should be a relocation of the landfills to the designated places. I mean, this is going to be a bigger challenge to the contemporary discussion. Similarly, like people are talking about the plastic, I mean, let's put it as a non-degradable material from the landfills. And once you segregate it, what should be the philosophy of using it and how? I mean, I'm sure MOUD has a lot of funds and they are encouraging people to participate, to give the answers to these type of questions. That after segregation, how are you going to use this material for creating infrastructure? I mean, this is more R&D and more association with the business units, entrepreneurs, and of course the champions like Ms. Patel and others is to be talked about. Policies are missing completely. We do not know whom to approach. We do not know how to go ahead with these ideas. And truly speaking, when you talk about the legacy waste, there is nothing which is very clear. And this is where some effort should be made. Thank you very much.
Great. So one other question and then we'll open. Yeah, please.
In this word microplastics, when it comes to Goa, what all waste you have observed in the Goa because of several tourism or something else. So how did you, what all techniques that you have taken to counter this waste management? Can you please tell us what all techniques you have taken in your waste management processes?
See, this is, these figures have just come to us, that is one. And microplastic in ocean water is being debated in the blue economy sphere all around the world. One of the countries really working on it is Norway and Scandinavia. And you must have read the Prime Minister of Norway and Prime Minister of India have signed an MOU on blue water technologies to improve this type of the quality. Since soap in its various forms and detergents are one of the major contributors of microplastic in ocean water and live natural water, one of the things which Goa has done is we have started a separate collection of soap from hotels. It's just in the infant stage. We have signed up with an NGO called Sundara India. It's based out of Palgad here in Maharashtra. They have, we work in recycling soap. So we hope to get around 1 ton of soap out separately, out from the landfill, out from the municipal waste per month. And we hope to avoid 1 ton of this going into our water to start with. As far as detergent and wash water is concerned, we have not yet come to a solution or a policy of what to do. We are still grappling with it, but it's a big concern. Million of washes are going on, so it's a concern. Tourism inherently is a very wasteful, luxurious industry. You will never change your towel every day at home, but when you go check into a hotel room, you want a pool towel, beach towel, and 1 towel to wrap yourself in. All 3 have to be washed a day, and now there are 6 towels in the room if you go to Goa. All have to be washed. It's a challenge. So again, mindset change, but the industry is very resistant to. Everyone tries to outdo the other. I hope it answers your question.
You had a response to.
I'd like to respond to the query about the mountainous dumps that we have outside every city and town. The Solid Waste Rules 2016 in section 15 bracket ZJ talks of bioremediation and biomining. This is entirely doable now. I refer you to YouTube, enter Almitra Patel. I've documented 3 such bioremediation and biomining efforts. The big problem we face in promoting this is the hugely expensive attraction of capping. All the municipalities want an expensive solution where they can purchase something costly like capping liners, which covers up the waste like lipstick on mouth cancer, and they can make a lot of money ordering such expensive things. It's very difficult for municipalities to get kickbacks from something which involves only labor and equipment operations. So the rules are very clear that 15 ZK capping is only the last alternative if you cannot do the biomining and bioremediation. So I think it's up to the residents around every dump to insist that they do not want capping, which will just cover up the waste, and the leachate and methane goes on for the next 25-30 years. It has to be a civic response.
Yeah, one very quick point. I mean, since you mentioned the elephant in the room is the corruption in the municipal governance when it comes to waste. It's not that no one is making any money out of the present waste. Somebody, maybe a small amount or not so small amount, they are making money. So therefore what happens is when I give you a working solution which reduces the volume of the waste which is to be transported, the person who is getting the transport contract has been hit. So what we will need to do, and again request to Sanjay that if Tata Center is serious about it, we need to look at policy gaps, policy hurdles and policy challenges. And it can be, some of it can be done fairly quietly because not to be quoted outside, I know a very senior official in Delhi was very politely told by the NDMC junior engineer that yes sir, in principle we can prosecute you for theft of municipal property, which was the waste.
I will second this. It's extremely challenging. When in 2003 we ran a campaign in Panjim called Bin Free in 2003. We removed 1,500 bin. All these people activate, and we have to grapple with it. When it is mixed and dumped, nobody bothers about it. Point two, what legacy waste dumps are concerned, Goa is showing its way. The facility which we have built is on a landfill, on a dump site, not landfill. We were dumping there for 20 years, and it had grown. 55,000 tons of waste was remediated. We have removed inerts and other recyclables, and only plastic has been still covered and kept so that we can send it slowly to a cement plant. But another policy which Goa has, it will never cap its old dumps. We will keep remediating it. So these are small issues, it costs money, but I do not know how this million lakh tons dump here in Mumbai or yes, you could do it. It's unbelievable.
What you are talking about is something is
yes. So, but point is, waste management starts small. Maybe the dump will not grow to such an extent. You can just work on.
The issue is what you are going to do with the grown up dumps.
Bring them down.
How?
Bioremediation.
Well, bioremediation we have to spend another how many years, I do not know. So this is urgent.
But it is less than capping.
So I'd like to just put one point in the middle of all this, is that there is one risk that we need to look at and probably take into account when we're talking about bioremediation, biomining, because a lot of municipalities are jumping to this, right? So the easiest way to tell the center that we're doing something about our city is to say that we have started biomining, we've started bioremediation, we put some JCBs there, we put some screens there, and we have started doing something. So we are showing the center that we have started work, right? And we get whatever, 3 green points for it. The risk here is that what is happening with the current waste? So first, before you can say that I have started bioremediation and biomining, you have to say where is my current waste going and what am I doing to ensure that this is not going back into another landfill. Because the only thing that we're going to do then is we're going to remediate this landfill which is in the center of the city, because we are unlocking some large wealth because the cost of land in the center of the city is far higher, and creating another landfill which is now out of the city and will be part of the city 20 years from now. So this is a big risk, and we have to make sure that we put our priorities right. And before you start land mining, every city must give their process of how they presently managing the current waste that's generated. And I think that should be an important factor to take.
So before...
I just want to add one point, is that someone was saying about the bacteria in waste when you are doing decentralized waste management, but I think Almitra and Rakesh Kumar can throw more light on it, that when the composting process starts, the temperature increases, so all the germs are killed. So how can you say that we will have bacteria? Actually, decentralized waste management is a better way even to remove landfills.
Just one point, Professor Munish has a class he has to go to, so we have time. I really want all of us to be here as long as possible, but I'd like to just present a memento to Professor Munish. Thank you for your presence and your comments. So,
if I can add to this thing which Munish said, although he left, in water treatment plants is a very common thing, that since you can't test bacteria, because any bacteria testing takes 24 hours to get the results, what is ensured is that you do chlorination and you test for chlorine. So if you have residual chlorine left of about 1 ppm or so, you know that it is disinfected. The same thing can be done for the compost as well. So there are, surrogate method by which you can figure out your bacteria free or not there. It's possible.
This point about while you're bioremediating your hills, what are you doing about today's waste and tomorrow's waste is very valid. And the answer for that is simply not to unload your waste in a heap, but to unload it in windrows, which are long, low heaps, about 2 meters, max 2.5 meters high. And if you turn them 4 times in a month, weekly, turn them weekly, each heap generates so much heat that it kills the pathogens, it kills the weed seeds, and it evaporates the moisture, promotes the conversion to natural carbon dioxide, and the volume comes down by 40%. So you're straight away left with only 60% of your problem, and it is all stabilized waste, mixed or otherwise. We have to give maximum importance to biostabilizing our daily waste by unloading it in windrows. I can talk about it offline later.
Any questions from the audience?
Hello everyone, I have a question. Ma'am, you mentioned about biomining. Do we have any policies regarding biomining? Like, where is these aggregates are sent, and are they scientifically used anywhere, and what about the heavy metals, pathogens, spreading of it? Are there any documents?
In my experience, I don't know what Rakesh feels, except for lead, all the other heavy metals are always within limits in any compost that I have seen results for. Rakesh, do you have?
It depends on which kind of city that we are talking about. So if city has industries around, then you may find some chromium, lead, nickel as well.
Yes.
Other places, if you are talking about like Bhopal, Indore, you don't find heavy metals in those compounds.
No,
Sorry?
I'll explain what are
But
done with
domestic
the different fractions.
now is the problem.
You take any sample of MSW across the country, I mean, you'll get all these traits there.
No, you make
We've tested MSW.
Yeah.
In Goa, I can tell you for sure, we've done 2 sample testings. One was in Panjim and then at the plant. And we've got, I mean, they're all within purpose.
Within limits. We're
Yeah,
not
they are
saying-
there, but they are within limits. I think that's the thing that we have to worry
We
about.
not have such good experiences, and what we did is, and that's quite mind-boggling. And again, that goes back to what has been done in the past, where everything was dumped there, and my question is pertaining to that. See, today's base I can manage always, but what has been done years back needs a very big attention.
Professor,
that is where I was saying that you can use it for social purposes. See, your problem is
No, her question is different. Can you?
No, I will.
No, I think she's talking about-
I want to finish answering her question. Bioremediation is doing to an old dump what you should have done on day one, opening up to air and to composting microbes. So once you have opened it up, turned it enough, brought down the volume by 40%, that waste, mixed waste, historic legacy waste, is stable enough for screening. Biomining is the screening operation. You will get a -4 mm fraction, which is half soil and half organics. Okay, you don't use it for food crops, you use it for your traffic islands, your medians, your other things. For Goa, the ideal thing is to put 10 tons per acre of plastic-free stabilized waste onto your mining overburden and just tiller it in. Add grass seed or let natural grasses take root, and you get revegetation. And the mines department has a huge unspent cess for revegetation, which is to be handed over to the forest department. And if you stick a sapling every 20 feet and expect it to grow without care, watering, and a microclimate, it doesn't work. But if you put stabilized waste, plastics-free stabilized waste on mining overburden, and wait for natural regeneration to start, grasses, herbs, shrubs, and so on. Later you can plant trees if you want. The mid fraction is mostly stony, and it can go for road embankments and so on. The coarsest fraction is RDF. And I don't want to take too much time talking about the RDF, except that this carbon number as a measurement is very valid, because we are talking of capturing the calories in RDF, but at what calorific cost of diesel to get it from one place to a cement plant far away. So that's a different issue.
No, I appreciate what you have said, but this is more of, copybook of style. In practice, where we are struggling, I tell you, is that there is no way to transport this material from one place to the place. There is no government rule structure on this, and you cannot promote these type of ideas of creating a garden or utilizing this material for construction of infrastructure or whatever. Unfortunately, this has been completely ignored. So my request to Tata Center would be, and particularly because Professor Agnihotri is here, create rules for such type of activities where this material is accepted as a resource material. And this is where my research group is working on this concept very vigorously. But we are struggling to use this material for creating anything anywhere. You've heard about even 10 meters. You cannot take it outside the premises. We have all these ideas. The question is, how would you convert it into a value-added material? How would you create something out of it? So every research has been done to prove that, well, nothing is unconducive. But how to practice it? I think
There is research and experimentation being done on embankment and road construction by CRRI, and the Delhi experiment is being worked upon.
This is something, but it's not validated yet.
Yeah, absolutely. The rules have to come. I'm saying the whole thing is the rules have not come.
Should take it forward at the planning stage.
Yes.
And once you do it, 90% problems are sorted out. We have solutions. It's not we don't have solutions.
See, another point is like the tech people also said, there are lots of experiments being done, lots of innovations being done, and they are, like how sir said, in the lab, not come to land. Goa is willing to offer its place, resource, and test these things in real time situations. And we would not want anything. We are ready to sign. My chief minister is your alumni. Make use of it. I will sign. We'll get his approval on SMS if you want, and sign right now. We will sign. Please test your thing in real-time condition. Whether it is a road embankment, show this test to the government of India. Get these rules out. But let us test in real-time conditions and just come out with finality. We will spend everything. You just bring your product, we will do everything. Labor, land, electricity, water, manpower, resource, everything Goa will do. You test it. We are absolutely.
So I think we should have a movement called,
yes,
Sajid, so we should have a movement called Chalo Goa. But the other thing on a more serious note about this problem of compost being picked up, you see, one important point is the distance. Now, one of our students had this experience of Pune and Nashik. Now, Nashik, where there is a farming community close by and the distances are small, they pick it up. So you are not talking. I am not talking in terms of selling it, but the farmers pick it up. But if they have to come into Pune all the way and take it, then they are not coming. So the same technology, the same climate, everything else being same, it works, but this parameter differs. So I think one of the serious suggestions that I'll have for all of us is that what is not feasible, please let it not stand in the way of what is feasible. Because what typically happens is, this Jalna commissioner is going to say, "Arey Pune mein nahi hota hai." No one tells him, "Sir, Pune mein nahi hota hai, Nashik mein hota hai, Jalna is closer to Nashik." So that's why I was saying, doable best practices, if we bring out a compendium, we also create a matrix कि इसी circumstances में work करता है. Otherwise, we will keep debating this till cows come home. And no, I'm not talking of the cows come home article on UP cows. And in a lighter vein, I mean, his remark reminded me, if you have 3 degrees C, everything goes cold. So three C's that you talked about.
So we'll have one last question and then we'll kind of close. Yeah.
So maybe it would be a humble request, not a question actually, to Dr. Almitra ma'am. So yesterday you mentioned that your house has been a zero waste house since for last 55 years. So if you can briefly tell us how have you managed to do so, because it's better late than never. So.
Good question.
No. I'm lucky enough to live in 4 villages outside Bangalore city when we first moved there in '72. So I live on a farm, and I put my wet waste in a tippe, a pit, a khadda, like any villager, and then it becomes compost. I give it to nearby farmers because I have more than I can use myself. And all the dry waste, I simply collect for a month and I donate it to the nearest kabadiwala. I just drop it off free. The problem has been, in the old days, torch cells and now button cells. And these I've tried to give to a cement block making unit, saying just put them all into a block for me and I'll buy those blocks. So it's immobilized.
Great. So I'll just make one remark. So I was part of Yatra with the Tata Center Fellows this year and also last year. And what was amazing, and Mr. Sanjeev probably did not have this in mind when you talked about tourism, but what was amazing is when the students went to your Goa Management Center, I could just see the change in the expression, right? When they saw actually what was happening and how much waste is coming in, how much effort is required to treat it. So we all have our individual, whatever, 500 grams or 1 kg, whatever waste that we are producing. But when you see tons and tons of waste accumulated, and it's all because we know, I'm not an economist, but we love to use that word, negative externality, right? All our sort of individual decisions and individual choices add up to something which society does not want to deal with. So what I'm suggesting is that the change in the expression and the conversation that happened afterwards were really amazing. So perhaps we should in some ways visit such sites, and that makes for a change in the way we start thinking or rethinking about what is happening to our problems, right, societal problems. Right? But as I said earlier, difficult sort of thing to do at the end of panel discussion or a session like this, to go to summarize all the different very rich threads. I really thank all the panelists for your presence today, and the eagerness on the face of the audience, and also the eagerness within me that the solutions to this will come out very quickly is something that we have to work towards. I'm sure Tata Center is going to provide some thought leadership on this going forward. I would like to take a moment to present mementos to our panel members. I'm told those who have already received mementos previously will not get another one, but so let me start with Professor Satish. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Sanjeev. Dr. Rakesh. Mr. Richard. We'll make sure you come back here. Professor Srinivas. Mr. Arun. So that was really a good set of topics and discussions. Thank you for being a patient listener. And there is tea outside, yes. So thank you.